About 20 million Europeans moved to the United States between 1870 and 1920. A large portion of them were from Eastern and Southern European nations like Russia, Germany, Italy, and Poland. Some immigrants fled persecution because of their religion. Others moved in order to escape poverty and improve their economic circumstances, as well as due to population growth. Still others migrated to America in search of more freedom. Asia contributed a smaller percentage of immigrants. Between 1851 and 1883, almost 200,000 Chinese immigrants arrived. During the Gold Rush, they came hoping to strike it rich. The country's first transcontinental railroad was constructed with the assistance of many Chinese immigrants. Several thousand Japanese immigrants arrived in the country when Hawaii was acquired by the United States in 1898. About 260,000 immigrants came to the United States from various Caribbean islands between 1880 and 1920. They were from Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, and other islands. Due to the lack of jobs, many people departed their home countries. A large number of Mexicans also migrated to the U.S. When the country acquired Mexican territory in 1848 as a result of the Mexican War, some people became citizens of the United States. Between 1910 and 1930, around 700,000 Mexicans immigrated to avoid unrest in their homeland. Steamboats were used by many immigrants to reach the United States. They shared a small, unhygienic area on the ship. In such unfavorable circumstances, sickness spread swiftly. As a result, numerous immigrants passed away prior to arriving in America. The majority of European immigrants arrived in New York. They had to go through an immigration checkpoint there, which was on Ellis Island in the Bay of New York City. The decision of whether the immigrants may enter the nation or had to leave was made by officials at the station. Any immigrant who had a communicable illness or major medical issues was returned home. Inspectors also verified that immigrants had the proper documentation before allowing them to enter the country. Angel Island in San Francisco served as a transit point for Asian immigrants traveling to the West Coast. On Angel Island, the inspection procedure was more challenging than on Ellis Island. In the eastern, southeastern, and western United States, further immigrants from Mexico and the West Indies arrived. For new immigrants, adjusting to a new nation with a different language and culture was a major task. Many immigrants settled in neighborhoods where there were also immigrants from the same nation. They were able to speak their original language and exercise their customs, which helped them feel more at home. These ethnic neighborhoods offered assistance and a sense of community. People established enterprises, built synagogues or churches, and consumed ethnic cuisine. Although native-born people frequently despised the habits and languages of immigrants, newcomers also desired to fit in. Some people's perception of America at the beginning of the century was that of a melting pot. By giving up their original languages and customs, many civilizations and ethnicities were said to have blended together. Many recent immigrants, however, were adamant about maintaining their language and culture. This gave rise to animosity toward immigration among certain Americans. Additionally, many Protestant Americans found it offensive that some immigrants were both Catholic or Jewish. These emotions gave rise to nativism, or a clear preference for Americans of native descent. Anti-immigrant organizations and the call for immigration controls were born out of nativism. Prejudice against Asians was initially targeted at the Chinese on the West Coast. A large number of Chinese immigrants labored for meager pay during the 1870s slump. The worry among American workers was job loss. Labor unions therefore exerted pressure on politicians to limit Asian immigration. The Chinese Exclusion Act, which barred all but a few Chinese immigrants, was approved by Congress in 1882. Not until 1943 was the restriction abolished. Additionally, Americans displayed hostility toward Japanese immigrants. All Asian pupils in San Francisco were sent to separate schools by the local school board. Japan objected to the behavior. San Francisco officials were persuaded to abandon their separation policy by President Theodore Roosevelt. In accordance with the Gentlemen's Agreement of 1907 to 1908 at that point, Japan consented to restrict the flow of unskilled workers into the United States.